Good evening, everybody, and welcome here to the Civic Center. I'm Matt Williamson. I'm your state court solicitor, and y'all look like a good-looking group of people. I don't believe I've ever had the pleasure of meeting y'all in court, so I'm glad that I haven't met y'all. I apologize for my appearance. I do have court this week. That's the reason why I'm dressed like this, or else I would have gotten into something more comfortable before I came up here. But thank y'all for being here tonight and being interested in this project. I live here in Rock Spring. I don't really have a dog in the hunt, but I just ask for keep things flowing, keep us all on track so that we can get out of here in a reasonable amount of time. I think the way that things are going to proceed is we've got a presentation on this project, and then after the presentation, we're going to open it up for some questions, and I'll come up at that time and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. So I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Mandel. One of the things to keep in mind, I've been through these, I don't know, 4 or 5 different times with developers to come in. Some of you may be here and you like the idea and you've got questions. Some of you may be here and you're against it, and that's fine too. But one of the things that I always encourage people to do when they come out to these things is remember that this gentleman, other people who have come before him with projects in mind, they're doing it because they want to invest in our county. So let's just remember what our mamas taught us and be nice and respectful as we can be, while also, if you want to oppose it, that's fine. Josh?
Am I live? Good. I guess I'm good. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Mandel, and I'm with the Gateway Company, Gateway Development. Our company's based in Florence, Alabama. We have an office in Birmingham as well. That's where I'm located. And I am here tonight to talk about the Gateway of Rossville multifamily apartment development. So just first off, I appreciate you all showing up. Obviously, this matters to you all, and we totally understand that. The nature of our business is we go to communities and we invest in those communities. We build multifamily communities that we're proud of, that we think those neighboring areas are proud of, and we think that's our track record. And we take a lot of pride in that. And we have to be mindful that we're in other people's communities where they go home every night. And I can't overemphasize that. And I want you all to hear us verbalize that, because if we're not mindful of that, then our business doesn't work very well. So I do, again, appreciate you all coming out. We appreciate Shannon Whitfield. We appreciate Robert Wardlaw and the way they have worked very carefully and diligently with us. And again, having done this kind of work is our bread and butter. They're pretty stringent representatives of their constituents, and we've been in a lot of different municipalities, and I'd say that they're not difficult to us. They've been very good to work with, very courteous, done everything they said they do. They hold a lot more than a typical representative we work with. So again, appreciate their participation with us. As Matt mentioned, we've got a quick presentation. The idea is to do several things. Try to address some of the concerns that we've heard either directly or word of mouth or through some other means that are good, objective concerns. A lot of concerns that we might hear in a lot of other communities that we go to. So we want to try to put those. We may not hear everyone. So, but if we don't hear, share that, sir.
Could you use the mic, please?
Yes. Is this live, Joe? How do I speak? Is that better? I'll try to speak up a little bit. This is all I've got. Yes, sir. So if we don't address a concern, like Matt said, once we get to the end of the presentation, it'll be quick. Feel free to raise that. The second thing is to show you a little bit of a visual of what this project will look like, as well as what our past experience and past development resume looks like. A few details on the project about how it will operate, and the investment in this community, and then our background, and then we'll open it up. So with that, I'll get started.
We're hunting a battery for that microphone, so maybe that'll help.
And again, if anyone else has trouble hearing me, please raise your hand and I'll either repeat it or try to speak louder. Again, so we're the Gateway Companies, Gateway Development, Gateway Management. Those are our two business lines. We develop and build apartment complexes, and we stick with them and we manage them. So, as I mentioned, let's talk about concerns. Let's talk about clarifications we can make. Number one, heard a lot of concerns. Hey, are you guys building a Section 8 community? We're not. We're in no way building Section 8. We don't do that. This is not Section 8. This property specifically, explicitly provides housing, affordable housing for workforce clientele in this area. Number two, hey, I've heard Walker County's provided financial incentives to the developer, or they're giving something to the developer to come here that's coming out of the taxpayers. That's also incorrect.
Test.
Is that better?
Use this one here.
Okay.
This one here.
Okay, I'll take this off then.
Josh, leave that on, that's for the live stream.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, number two, that's incorrect, as I mentioned. Walker County never offered any financial incentives, and we never asked for any financial incentives. And it's just simple as that. Like I mentioned, we've been dealing with very stringent representatives on the Walker County side, and that was, they made it very clear from the beginning that was not going to be part of the conversation. So kind of like the first concern, hey, we hear residents are going to get subsidies to pay their rent at your community, or they're going to get reduced rent at your community. That's also incorrect. The residents are fully responsible for their rent. And we'll get into rental rates in a moment, but if a one bedroom is charging around $750 or $760, every resident is going to have to pay that who wants a one bedroom. Every resident pays the same for a two bedroom. That's going to be around $900 or $910 a month. And we have to make sure they pay that. Naturally, we're in the real estate business, we're in the apartment business, and we have to make sure they are credit worthy and that they've got clean criminal backgrounds. So that's why we use industry standard third-party monitoring services. So when you fill out your application, you want to live in our community, you've got to pass those criminal and credit background checks. Number four, the development will avoid paying its fair share of property taxes. This is not correct. And I also want to explain, we understand there can be confusion. People don't live in our business. If you're not doing what we do every day, you know, it's just not as important. This project should contribute around $105,000 a year in property taxes. Our lenders have already calculated this. They're lenders, so they want to know that on the front end. This is reflective of what we've done around Georgia. There's no end game here. This is what it is. And, you know, none of us like surprises. In the development world, we get enough surprises without having to create more for ourselves. So once we kind of stipulate a property tax number, it's not that on the number because there's a whole process that goes in, but that's a pretty accurate number. And what that equates to, of course, is about, with 156 units, $675 per unit per year, and that's on average unit size of about 1,000 square feet. So it's a pretty standard market-oriented tax bill. The fifth concern, this development will create increased traffic problems in the area. We've got a lot of feedback around that, and we get it. We totally get it. That is a general concern that's been voiced to us numerous times, and we respect that. We're not, we're not arguing with that. When we sat down with your local representatives early on, one of the first things they told us we had to do was to get a traffic study. And in our business, we're used to doing that kind of thing. We did that. We had a local professional traffic engineer issue us a study. And while there are normal things that we'll have to do that go with any kind of real estate development investment in a community, that traffic study very clearly reflects that we can make with enhancements we're prepared to contribute ourselves. Not asking for dollars from local officials, we can address those so that this problem with the incremental development we're doing should be very manageable. Okay, so like I mentioned, we want to show a few renderings of what this project looks like. These renderings were provided.
Not working.
It's not.
No.
Does anyone else have? Did that turn? Okay. Did I accidentally hit it off? Thanks. Before I proceed, I realize that's a lot louder now. Did anyone not hear any of my last concerns that I voiced? If you didn't, are you good here? Or so as I mentioned, sir, this we've received a lot of questions about traffic. Early on, your representatives insisted that we get a traffic study done to make sure that this was not going to exacerbate the traffic situation that already existed there. We were ready to do that. That's what we do in our business. We have to do that kind of thing as a matter of practice. We had a local engineer do a traffic study about a year ago. He since updated it. And while this will have some impact on traffic, it's something that's very manageable. And that traffic study came back very favorable towards this project's impact. And with us being willing to make investments alongside GDOT and local officials, the traffic, this is a professional traffic engineer. His numbers are showing that this will be a very manageable increase to deal with. Okay, so as mentioned here, development renderings. These are reflective of what this community will be like. A lot of brick, a lot of tasteful, hardy, very attractive landscaping. Our architect is based in Georgia. Those professionals have been doing this work for going on 30 years. Studio 8 Architecture out of Valdosta. They've done hundreds of projects around the state of Georgia and beyond. Very well known, very established in Georgia. So here's a view of one of the interior courtyards. Here's another view of the courtyard. You can see to the left side of the picture, picnic verandas. Well landscaped, well laid out. A view of the parking. Most of the parking will be protected within the property. And some of the amenities, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment, in a moment. But we'll have a swimming pool, pool deck, cyber room, some real enhancements for this community. So part of the exercise as a developer is showing what we plan to develop, what we plan to provide. A natural healthy skeptic might say, well, that looks good, that's great, but how do we know you're going to do what you said you're going to do? Well, that's what our commitment is to the community. And these are some of the recent projects we've done in Georgia. This is Highland Estates. This is right down the road in Rome. We completed this property about 4 years ago. Here's another property we're very proud of in Savannah, Wood Meadow Apartments, built with the same financing structure. Tranquility Griffin, we completed this project about 18 months ago. This is in Griffin. This has been a great community for us. We're currently working on another community in this town. We've established very good relations with the local officials and the community, and this is what we like to do. We like to prove ourselves, show that we can honor our commitments, be a good citizen, and then get an opportunity to do more. So a few key project details about this community. As I mentioned, we're using Studio 8, established, reputable architectural firm. We like these exteriors. We think it's a very attractive aesthetic design on the exterior, the landscaping, and the interiors of this community will be consistent with that. So we showed a rendering of the swimming pool and the covered lounge area. We'll also have a fitness room, cyber room, and offices for our full-time staff. And finally, this is always important in the communities we go into. We don't want to have buildings that are too high. So by code, we're going to be limited around 40 feet. We think one of the key value propositions of this community is that there is a significant workforce housing shortage in Walker County. And I stress workforce. To get our lenders to finance, to get our investors to come into a property, we have to show that the market can support, that the market's not overbuilt, that the incomes are there to pay the rents. All the typical real estate fundamentals that you look at. Our market study for this community reflected that occupancy is at 98.8% for this kind of housing stock. And if you just say, for instance, take a 100-unit apartment complex, that doesn't mean, for those who are not, in our industry every day, that doesn't mean that you can walk into that community and there'll be one apartment vacant. It means that there are waiting lists, and there are waiting lists all over Walker County. And we think that what we can provide is a really attractive product to be a good citizen here. We talked about the credit and criminal background checks, and I've skipped over a bullet. This is a long-term hold. This is not build and flip. We can't cut corners on the construction and try to be gone in 4 years. We'll be here for at least 15 years. We're required to do that with this financing structure and by our investment agreement. And that's what we've done just about in every single community that we've developed in Georgia. And when we haven't, it's just been because it's a different type of financing structure. But we've done this over 40 times in Georgia. Excuse me. We will have full-time staff here to manage this property. That's probably 2 in the office, 2 maintenance out in the field. It also means that if someone has an electrical problem or HVAC breaks down in the middle of August, we have staff on call. And so someone's AC goes out at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon when it's 100 degrees out, they can get somebody who's going to be there, and they're not going to wait until Monday. And we think that's a really important thing that you can take for granted until it happens to somebody. We'll target residents with annual incomes of about $26,000 to $47,000. There's a little bit of movement. That number changes every year with census data, but that's our strike zone. And so we'll be charging rents of about $760 for 1 bed, $910 for 2 beds, and about $1,050 for 3-bedroom units. Those are one bed, 1 bath, 2 bed, 2 bath, 3 bed, 3 bath. Wanted to hit on a few key points about the economic impact that we project to make in this. Again, we feel very comfortable with these numbers because this is kind of what we do every day. We mentioned the property tax number at the top, $105,000 roughly. Overall, it's going to be about $25 million capital investment. With that construction work, we're projecting over $500,000 in sales tax from the construction work. We'll have to pay tap fees, we'll have to pay permit fees. Again, some places we go into, representatives are offering us incentives. We didn't get that here, and we didn't expect it, but we didn't get it here. 150 to 200 direct and indirect construction jobs on account of this project. A little background history on our company. This company was founded over 35 years ago by Alan Rappoon. Alan is still Alan's not as active as he used to be, but he's a great person. He's a great leader in our company, and he set a great trajectory for us and a great example. We developed over 100 apartment communities throughout the South. Georgia's probably our most active state right now. So over 40 communities in Georgia. We've got a very seasoned development leadership team, over 100 years combined experience among our leadership team. As I alluded to at the beginning, we're not just a developer. We've invested in the manpower to operate our communities for the duration. And that's people on site, that's people in an office, that's people handling the back office, all the HR, the accounting, making sure bills get paid on time. When we invest in our properties, we stay with them. Same for our management. That's not the same. That's not the same people. I mentioned 100 years on our development staff. That's a different part of our team. We've got over 100 years of leadership experience. Management experience with our management leadership. We're willing to offer references, examples of what we've done in the past, folks that we feel we've measured up to. And in closing, here are our websites. If you need those or need to take a picture, you can get more information on what we've done, who we are there. Matt, that's it.
Thank you, sir. Since we've been having some audio issues, folks, if y'all don't mind, just in a crowd of this size, I think the way that we can manage this is, if y'all don't mind using just this one microphone, I think what we can do is maybe move it here toward the middle, move to a more centralized location, the way if anybody's got any accessibility issues, we can accommodate that. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. All right. So again, let's just remember as we move into our question time, we're here to talk about this project. You know, if anybody's got concerns with other things related to different projects or Walker County government, you know, if grass is too high or whatever, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about this project. So I guess we can open up the floor if that's all right.
I'd like to ask one question.
Yes, sir.
These people that are gonna be buying this, spending this money.
Oh, sorry.
These people that are spending this money for those projects, I mean, for renting
Our residents.
your residents. Now, they're not going to be gaining anything, like if they don't get any equity. I mean, they can't buy, all they're doing is spending $1,500. Why can't they go out and buy their own house? I bought my house for a whole lot less than what you're paying. And what y'all are charging, they could be buying houses and building their own houses instead of putting one big conglomeration right there in that area.
Sure. Fair question. Our business exists because some people don't want to. They don't want the responsibility. And so I understand what you're talking about in terms of the dollars and the cost. And there are people who eventually move out. A lot of times what we do, we capture somebody who's making $30,000 at one stage of their life, and they end up making, 50 or 55 or something, and maybe they're married and their spouse makes that kind of money too, and they move up and they end up buying a home. But there's a very healthy demand for folks who don't want the responsibility and who need the rental housing.
They don't want the responsibility, they're lazy.
Well, sir.
But all the buildings you built over the 15, 20 years, what has been the findings on property value? Down?
So the question was, in our business experience, what has been the impact of properties around us, right? It's a good question, and to be honest with you, I couldn't give you a patent answer on that. It's not something that we study, but generally, the impact has been positive. And, you know, one question I've gotten before is, what are you all going to do about security? Well, we don't tend to go to places where we're going to have security issues. That's a real estate analysis that we make on the front end. We're reaching out and trying to host affordable workforce clientele. And so they're trying to go to a place that's improving, and our communities tend to be positive impacts on the neighboring area. These are working people. You go through our parking lots at 11 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. They're going to be pretty quiet. Yes, sir.
Is it possible we,
I
Is
can
this
do that if you
working?
want. I can do that.
is it possible we may get a copy of the transportation study?
Sure. Let me say that. So we're happy to share that traffic study with you. Here's what I'd ask is I'd prefer to show it because one, it's proprietary and we have, you know, it's part of our work, it's part of what we do, but we have nothing to hide. Be happy to show it, but because it's proprietary, we can't disseminate it and send it out, but there's nothing we have to hide in that. And we're happy for anyone to go through it, and we'll make time to do that. Ma'am?
Yeah, I live in Mission Glen subdivision, and
Yes, ma'am.
I've been going through this entire process with you. And the traffic study that you speak of, that was done a year ago, was also done during COVID and during Thanksgiving and Christmas break, so it's not very accurate depiction of what happens at that intersection. And also, more things have happened since then. There's been 250 homes on the opposite side of that intersection that have been approved, and 100 cottages that have been approved. So that's 350 more people. And then normally, there's 2 people in a household that drive, so that's 700 more people that are going to be added to that intersection that you can't even account for in a traffic study yet. And that's a big concern to our community. And I also have a question for you. If this didn't go through, would you be interested in any other part of Walker County, or are you just dead set on this one area?
So let me hit the first question. Take no issue with the concern about the traffic and the continued development there. And you're correct, that traffic study was done in like June or July of 2020, which was in the middle of COVID. But we did account for those numbers, and our traffic engineers accounted for those numbers. And he also updated about 2 weeks ago. That's what, you know, in fairness, that's what he does. And he's supposed to be able to look and say, look, I've been doing this for 30-some years, and 2020 doesn't look like every year before, and it's definitely not going to look like 21. So I'm not taking issue with your point you're raising, but in our defense, we have gotten that updated, and as this gentleman asked, we're happy to share that. I don't take offense where you're coming from. I just think there's more to it that it's fair for us to share. Your second question, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Would you be interested anywhere else in Walker County, or is it just this one location?
Oh, we would be absolutely interested. I mean, we believe this was a valid rezoning, and we think this was done properly. But we also think that if we're going to play the long game here, we ought to do this in a way that you know, is the most open and friendly and best foot forward way to be in a community that we want to be in for a long time. And like I said, we take a lot of pride in our reputation. And I put 3 development examples up there, but I could put a lot more, but it just starts to get old. And in our minds, we want to see this through. We've committed a lot to making this work, and we believe because we've done this successfully and other communities have been happy to have us, that we're going to do the same here. And then we would welcome the chance to do this somewhere else in Walker County, but we gotta do first things first. Sir? Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Does
Lynn.
your company purchase this property yet in contingency that this goes through?
Uh,
Who owns this property?
This property is currently owned by the Hutchison estate. Sure.
If you already purchased the property?
No, we're under contract to purchase it.
Contract to purchase?
Yes, sir. No, sir, yeah. Did you have a question?
I did.
I think I got an answer.
Sir, you want me to mic again?
Yeah.
On the access to this property, are you gonna be coming off of Happy Valley Road or Battlefield Park R2?
Just Happy Valley.
Because I know you can't come off of 2 because it's a designated highway that's no access
Yes, sir.
in Walker County.
Yes, sir. We'll just have access off Happy Valley. One access.
Now, I know in projects like this, you have a lot of water runoff. What are you going to have to build a pond somewhere and for the water runoff?
Yes, sir. I can explain that. Sure. No, I mean, that's part of, we gotta, we've gotta get a stormwater and a sewer permit. And so, we'll have to have, plenty of detention pond space. And in getting our building permit, we'll have to have the stormwater engineers.
Because concrete don't soak up like the land that you're taking.
Yeah, no, you're right, but it's just like we gotta make sure that we've got, buildings that are properly designed, we've gotta have a site that properly handles the runoff and the stormwater, so.
Would you live in a community like this, or do you live in a community like this, or, well, I'm sure you're probably pretty well off in the neighborhood where you've got by your 2 or 3 acres or a farm or something. Is that right?
I live in a normal neighborhood, that'd be grass I'd have to, too much grass I'd have to cut. I got 3 teenagers, so, sir.
Is there going to be a buffer zone between the residential area and the development?
Yes, sir, there will.
There will, what does that consist of? Trees or wooden?
Yeah, the Mission Glen, you will not be able to see, the buffers and the trees, the landscaping design, will make it so you can't see the community from the Mission Glen subdivision.
All the way through?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That, again, just like the question about the stormwater and how we handle that stormwater runoff, that is, again, totally understand where you're coming from on that, but it's something that we have to do to get a building permit, just like making sure that the buildings are structurally sound. Sir?
In a prior meeting, we learned that the sewer system in the area wouldn't be big enough for these apartments. And the county was waiting on a right-of-way to go up Highway 2 and Highway 27. Has the county received that right-of-way yet?
So, I can't speak, if someone else wants to speak for the county right-of-way section, I can speak to the sewer question. We've worked with Brandon Whitley at the Walker County Sewer Authority. Very, very straightforward to deal with, and he was able to determine there's plenty of capacity to support our project. Sir, in the back? Okay. But on the right-of-way question, I wouldn't be the person to answer that.
One of the things that we shared with Josh and his team in the very first meeting was capacity issues with the sewer, since the sewer currently goes into Chattanooga. And we told these guys, you got to get with the Water and Sewer Authority, get with Brandon Whitley to figure that out and make sure that works. We did share with them that we are working on a transfer line to bring the sewer waste from the north end of the county back to the Chickamauga facility. That project is It's still pending DOT approval, as you indicated. We've not gotten that approval to run that transmission line in the right-of-way down Highway 2, nor down Highway 27. They'll give us permits and have issued permits to bore under the road and cross under it 2 or 3 different places, but to run parallel beside it is something that our engineers are still working on and trying to come to a resolution on. But that is still hopefully moving forward to accommodate capacity issues that Chattanooga's having, where we can divert that flow back to Chickamauga facility.
Thanks. Yep, ma'am.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure. You need the mic or
Sure. I'm pretty loud,
either way, whatever you prefer.
and I'll be right in your face while I ask them. So my first question is, why do you think it was zoned agriculture to begin with?
You know, that's before my time.
I think a valid answer, or a consideration would be because of where it's at and how much y'all are gonna have to invest to address all of the concerns. If this was a valid rezone, which I don't think it was, but if it was, then why aren't you here?
Sure.
Oh,
You want
I have so many questions.
you want to hit those two first?
I want those two first, yes,
Okay.
and then I have another.
If it was zoned agriculture, I imagine because it was intended for agriculture use at that time. You know, land changes, communities change, communities grow, and properties are rezoned. But I really can't speak for why it was like that. Your second question was,
The validity of the rezone.
okay, and what was it? Help me, because I'm
That's why I didn't throw all of it at you. If you truly believe that it was valid, which, I'm sure you've heard that there's concerns that it
Sure.
wasn't, then why are you here?
No, we don't. So the question is, if we believe that this was a valid rezoning, why are we here?
Like, why are we doing this all again?
Because we're not going to be able to develop this overnight. And we're not going to build this and when there are construction defects, sweep them under the rug because we know that we're going to flip the property in 3.5 years. Like I said, respectfully, we want to see this through. We believe in this project. We believe there's been enough support for this project around the community that we want to see this through. So if you say, hey, we're Gateway, we're going to commit to Walker County, the Rossville area, and plus we want to come back because we like this area, which is why we came here in the first place. Then if you take the long game, you got to play the long game. And so if we just ignore, concerns folks are raising here, then we're going to tick folks off when we have a chance to maybe come here and say, hey, I understand your concerns. Not saying they're not well-founded, but there's some misinformation, there's some things that have been said that aren't correct, and I'll walk through a few of those, and like I said, if someone has other things that I have not addressed, that's why we're here. We're playing the long game, and it's as simple as that. And we're not gonna make friends if we just ignore everybody.
No.
So.
Another question is, so you guys actually do not own the property yet. You're under contract,
No.
correct? So if this doesn't get approved, so say the rezone doesn't go through, and you're talking about a long game and stuff like that, so what happens if that rezone doesn't go through?
Well, that's a hypothetical. So I'd rather not. I'd rather not cross that bridge until we get there.
Okay. Fine. We'll just pass it back
Sure.
and forth. The traffic studies, of course, that is a big deal. And you're saying that you'll go through those with everybody, so how do you anticipate doing that?
There's easy ways to do that. Whether we schedule a time to come here and sit down with folks at a desk and we can pass around, make a few copies, let everybody flip through it and see what they want to see. Whether we have a Zoom and we schedule a Zoom for folks to be able to call in from their home or their office or what have you. We're open for it. We had, until I got the question, really hadn't thought about it, but I mean, there's a doable way to do that. And I'm not gonna get up here and say we can do it and then not do it. So, I mean, we're open.
My final question is, I mean, it's great that you're saying all this, of course, you know, but I mean, what holds you to that? Like when, say this all goes through, which I personally am vehemently against, but say this all goes through and, you know, it's up, you know, then what? I mean, obviously you're not tearing it down. So what holds you to what you're telling everybody? I mean, personally, for me personally, I actually don't live there. It has no bearing on me whatsoever. I live in Chickamauga. But I've heard over and over again from the citizens in that area, and I've grown up here. I grew up in Walker County. I had siblings that went to Richland. I mean, you're not from here. You don't know how many wrecks have happened at that intersection. There was just one last week where a life force was called in. You know, so I mean, what you're saying is hypothetical to us, honestly. You know, so what holds you to that? I mean, is it in your contract? Like, what holds you to that?
Well, I'll tell you what, first of all,
Yes.
let's do this. And this is what it's all about, right? You're asking me, and I appreciate the way you're asking me, so that's what I'm here for. And we can go through this, you know, until we hit everything. Before we talk about what holds us, you know, when you're asking, you know, if you have to get a new plumber, if you have to get a new electrician, you have to have someone do something on your house, as an example. If you want to make sure this person's legit, right?
Right.
And so you don't know what they're going to do until they do it, right? And so one of the best things that can happen is you either have someone you trust vouch for them, or you go and you say, give me some references, or show me that you've done this before.
Right.
And that was really the whole point of why I put those past developments up there, is because that doesn't tell you, hey, that's exactly what this project, I'm not guaranteed anything.
Right.
But we are so committed to this, and we've done it so many times, there's a lot of value in our minds to saying, hey, we've got plenty of people to vouch for us. That's the wrong word. Plenty of people to vouch for us, and plenty of people who can attest to what we've done in their community.
Right.
Now, in terms of wanting to hold us to what we're doing, give me the concerns you're talking about that we might not honor.
Okay. So you're saying, yeah, you're gonna make traffic improvements.
Yeah.
What improvements are you gonna be making?
So that's a complicated question, and I'm not avoiding it. But that's got to get worked out with the whole building permit and the whole traffic design. We've already committed capital out of our pocket to help towards those improvements. And that's going to be known by folks. I mean, that's going to be part of the whole building permit approval. That's public record. There's nothing there. And like I said, just from a matter of experience, we've been held to a higher standard than we're used to being held. And we have a high standard.
Right.
So, you know, that there's nothing that anybody can hide about how that'll get worked out.
Okay. So everything y'all are putting through, that's public record, correct? So we could go find all of it.
You know, all this gets approved. You know, a gentleman asked about this. Sure. A gentleman asked about stormwater permits. Someone asked about the buffers. That all goes into our design and our design approval. I mean, that's just kind of standard course.
Okay. And what if that don't happen? What if you don't do that?
So,
I know.
I don't know. We've never, you know.
This is what they're worried about. This is why I'm asking you these questions.
Well, they owe you a pat on the back when you go back to them, okay? Okay, so what happens if it doesn't? Again, that's kind of hard to say. We've never had that happen before. That's a whole new ballgame, but if that doesn't happen, that means that we don't get a building permit. And so if we don't get a building permit, that land just sits out there and stays like it is until something else happens. But again, this is what we do, and it's our intention to see that through. So.
My last question.
Sure.
I know you know your own reviews online, and there's some that are just not awesome. And that obviously feeds into the concerns. I mean, one of the reviews was talking about how it looks more and more like the projects, you know. I'm not saying that's what you're gonna do, I'm not saying that's what you're gonna allow to happen, But what do you have what do the developers have in place? What do y'all have in place to prevent that from happening? So say it does start going downhill for whatever reason, what are y'all going to do to deal with that?
Sure, I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I'm glad to look at that with you afterwards. Yeah, that's not how we operate, and that's not how, it doesn't reflect the resident testimonials we get or the partner testimonials, so I can't speak to that. But as far as keeping it from running down, well, we've encouraged people, if you're in North Georgia or Central Georgia, or if you're in North Alabama, if you're in Tennessee, go visit one of our properties. I mean, Rome is 35 minutes away. That's an easy one to visit. So we encourage folks to drive past our properties, go visit them. It kind of answers your question that our properties don't fall into disrepair. Now, in terms of having checks and balances, so to speak, our lenders they're the ones who put the money into this. Now, we got the guarantees, but our lenders aren't going to let our properties fall into disrepair. Our investors aren't going to do it, and the state agencies aren't going to let us do it. So we've got so many people staring over our shoulders. That's just usually not the biggest industry problem we have.
I'll let somebody else.
You sure you let me off the hook here?
Okay, maybe for right now.
All right. Sir.
This may pertain to you, may not directly, but y'all did your traffic study. In the commission meeting last week, they had 500 homes that did a traffic study, and the guys across. Y'all did a traffic study, and the guy that's going to build the 500 homes did a traffic study. The one across the street in Heat Tech, he was going to do a traffic study, but traffic is our main concern. We live down the road on Wilson Road. And I've been in Georgia all my life, lived where I'm at for 35 years. The traffic's what's going to make me leave. But do they not do a combined traffic study? Like the lady said, it's over 700 houses. If you do a combined traffic study, what is that going to do to the roads?
So, sir, just to make sure I follow you, your question is, in addition to the impact of our community, what does a combined traffic study reflect about the other development?
It's over 700 wetlands
So,
combined.
part of this we can speak to directly, and then part of it is handled on the other side of the conversation. And so, our traffic study says, based on what's out here right now, here's what we expect from an increased level of service, increased traffic that's directly created by our project relative to what's out there right now. Then, part of the process is local officials, GDOT officials who are working with local officials, they're able to take the higher view and say, all right, well, the gateway projects, they've accounted for their traffic that's going to come off of their project, but there's other traffic in other projects. I can't speak for that. That's what they speak for, but we present on our project, and then somehow the process is worked out on the other side.
That's why I said partly your question and partly the commissioner's question. If you combine 700 and something units, but
Yeah,
you can't.
yes, sir. Sure.
In your other properties, what is your turnover rate? A lot of turnover, a lot of long-term leasing? How's that work out in these other properties?
Good question. I mean, that's a huge, just from an X's and O's, standpoint, in our business, turnover is one of the biggest costs. It's probably the biggest cost, of anybody that's had rental property. So in terms of like metrics or factors that we're watching, we watch turnover very closely. The industry average is usually around 50%. Our property's around in the low 30s. And so we really try to retain our residents. Sometimes, like I said, a lot of times we're losing residents just because that person that started out making 32 and may not have been married or what have you ends up getting married he or she marries somebody with, they make 35 and he's now making 40, and they go and they buy a house or something. Sir.
Hey, earlier, we were talking about that, you said you had to stay around approximately 15 years over in the project. During that period of time, it looked like there would have been some kind of survey ran on the values of the housing around it. If there hadn't, it appears to me that you don't run a survey, there's nothing positive at the end of the rainbow.
All right, let me, look, again, I can't, there's no way I can look you in the eye and tell you, oh, well, in most of our communities, the surrounding homes have increased X dollars. What I can tell you is that most of our property values have increased X dollars. And so that part of that's just the nature of our economy, but we don't really have any, you know, having done, our company been around for 40 years, it's not common for us to have a property that goes down in value, and we think that's a reflection on the area. Sir.
I was going to ask you the lady's question about holding you accountable. I haven't been to a planning commission meeting in forever, but I'm assuming whenever you do your presentation for the planning commission, that you have to provide some idea of what you're going to do as far as this corner project, and then our county codes enforcement and planning department will stay with you. So if you decided midway through the project or before you broke ground, we don't want to do this, we want to change it, our county would hold you responsible. Is that correct? Or could you go over that process a little bit?
Sure. And it may be that someone from the county wants to speak to that process, because I'm not, you know, when you're in our position as the developer,
I was just the young lady that was asking about what holds
Sure.
you accountable.
I understand.
You say you're going to do these, and then you go, well, I'm not going to, you know, whatever. But there is some accountability. Several, as you was talking about your lenders and your investors, but our county has some responsibility also through the planning and zoning.
Yes, and absolutely. Now I follow you, and we did have an exchange with her when we were talking, and one of the things we discussed was, if we don't do what we say we're going to do, we're not getting a building permit. You know, I mean, you know, what we get approved in planning, you know, is just one step of the way to making sure that, you know, once we get our use approved, once we get the density approved, once we get the site plan approved, then we've got to go through so many, you know, there's like 16 sets of plans that go into a building permit submission. And then we got to get that permit, or we're just looking at a piece of land. So,
Have you walked the property?
yes, sir.
Is that not a sinkhole out there in the hay field, and then there's some trees around?
Yeah, I mean, like any site, there's imperfections. There's sinkholes, there's topo, there might be some rock issues underground. We've done soils reports. We've got plans for all that. So yeah, you know, very few sites in our experience are perfect, but we've had our engineers plan for all that stuff. This gentleman has it, and I'll get to you.
Earlier you said, I don't remember whose question it was, but you said that the community supports you guys coming in. Where exactly is that support from? Everyone that we talk to, no one supports us. And I know that's more of an elected official, but what would you say to the people that live in that community that do not want you to come in there and build these apartments? What would you say to us?
Well, I guess two questions.
Can you repeat your question?
Sure, you want this?
I'm asking him what he would say to the people in the community that do not want him to come here. What he would say to us, like why would we be able to, what would make us feel better about him coming into our community and building what he's building? And then I also asked him, where is the support coming from? Because he said the community supports this, but I don't know anybody in this room that supports it.
So first question is, what would make folks in the community, is support this project, best way to say it? I'm going to turn these bubbles off real quick.
And I'm not trying to be hostile to you.
No, I get it.
You're just the guy that's been chosen to talk to.
I mean,
I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you.
No, yeah,
I've got concerns. I've lived in Tennessee for all of my life, and then 3 years ago, I decided to take a chance from Walker County, and right now, I'm regretting my decision. And if this is approved, I will move. And I know I'm not the only one in this room that feels the same way.
Okay, well, I can't, you are gonna decide what you're gonna do, and whatever I say is not gonna change that, and I'm not here to change that. I respect that. It's your community. You're going home to an area that's right next to that site. So I respect that. And we have gotten a lot of support. It's going to meetings, it's going to other town halls, and folks come up to us afterwards and say, hey, really like what you're doing. This will be good for the area. So when I talk about community support, I just mean anecdotally. There are a lot of folks who've approached us and said this is going to be good for the county. It's going to be a large capital investment that hasn't been made here before. It's going to solve a workforce housing need that right now isn't being met for people making, say, $32,000 or $35,000 a year. So you can't please everybody all the time, and I respect. I may not be able to change your mind. All I can do here is correct information that may not be that may be mistaken or may not have been thought out or whatever it is. And we think that the positives far outweigh the negatives, and the lasting impact, and the fact that we're willing to stick around for 15 years. We're not. This isn't a shell game. We're here. I mean, we're here to stick by what we do. So, did you have a question, ma'am?
Yeah, so a question that I just kind of was thinking of, you're being real honest, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming here and answering questions like this. I know it's not easy, but I don't understand. There's a lot of things that you have admitted that we don't have ironed out, that you can't answer right now, but Thursday we're having a rezoning meeting, and I don't understand why we're having a rezoning meeting when we don't have things ironed out. Shouldn't we have everything ironed out and like a plan nailed down before we go on with a rezoning and like push the process? I mean, it just seems like we're skipping some steps to me. And I also have a question about all the kids that are going to be living in those apartments. The parents are not going to want to get out in that traffic right there and then make immediate turns into the high school, because I don't like driving through there, taking my kids to the schools. It's a nightmare. I do it every day, and I dread it every morning when I get up to take my kids to school. It's a nightmare. I can't stand it. I wish there was something done before anything else gets built there to relieve some of the issues that we're having. The whole community knows, like anything that I've seen on Facebook and people that I've been talking to have been talking about how bad that area is, and
Sure.
It just seems like we should have that nailed down before we go on with anything else. So what's going to be the plan for the kids? Because they're going to be trying to walk across that busy street. That brings up a whole nother safety concerns for the kids. I mean, we can't just assume that everything's going to be okay. We need to have plans in place, and I really feel like we need to nail things down a lot harder than what they are right now before we move on anymore. And I also wanted to know what's going to prevent, because my property adjoins that property, like directly, there's just that creek separating us. What's going to stop people from the apartments just wandering onto my property? That makes me very uncomfortable, and my privacy is going to be gone, and I don't want people just wondering about my property. I was hoping there might be some kind of gate or fence. I was hoping you could tell me there was going to be some kind of border there that's going to stop them from more than trees. I'm going to need more than trees.
Man, y'all come with some questions. I'll tell you what. So you got to bear with me now, because you threw a lot at me. We'll sit them one at a time.
Okay.
Y'all did your homework.
I have.
Okay, so the first question was about what's going to make sure that if, when the,
First question was, don't you think we should have more of a plan nailed down before we move on to step 2, rezoning? Like, shouldn't you have all your facts beforehand? I mean, does it make sense to go ahead with a rezoning and upset all these people and do all these things when we don't have answers to a lot of the questions that people are asking?
So there are a couple of things we've touched on tonight that I'm not giving you a crystal clear, specific, definitive line-by-line answer. One, because I'm not an engineer, and that's not, that's why we've got good folks handling that for us. But most of this stuff has been pretty well worked through, and a lot of the approvals, a lot of the design questions that I think you're raising, whether it's stormwater, whether it's buffer, whether it's structural, whether those aesthetics are gonna be there. Those are caught usually through the building permit process, and that's just technical. I mean, there are very clear requirements in the ordinances and in the building codes that that don't give a whole lot of flexibility on that. And we've already submitted building plans to address all of those. And again, it's not in our interest to submit incomplete or defective plans that are going to take a lot longer, and the city building engineers or the building officials that use outside engineers, if they get sloppy or incomplete documents, it just drags the process out, costs us time, costs us money. So I don't think there are really that many questions. The traffic question is it's a little more complicated because I think, as a gentleman raised, you have other area things, but that's been a pretty well vetted issue, and it's not like it's 5% complete. I'd say it's more like 80% complete or 90%. It's much more complete than it is incomplete, and most of the building and site design items have been addressed.
What are you going to do about the kids that live there trying to cross the street?
Sure.
To get to the schools?
So that's part of the traffic. That's part of the traffic analysis. And so we're not, as business people, we're not going to develop a community where kids walking across the street don't have adequate, safe crossing. That would be crazy, and I wouldn't be showing you those samples. I wouldn't be putting the number of communities we've done. You shouldn't even have to ask us what traffic-wise, like, that's just bad business on our part to do that. So one, I can speak for us and tell you that.
Just not getting clear answers. We're just concerned. I mean, anybody, not just you, like anybody that we talk to, no one can definitively say this is the solution, this is the plan that we have in place. No one has addressed the issue. It's concerning. It's the main concern.
Well, there's a lot of code aspects that will drive that. County officials can speak to that better than I can. But now we're getting into code aspects where that between what we're contributing from traffic and what we need to do from our business and what county officials are going to require by a matter of law. I understand where you're coming from. I'm just saying that because we do this every day, it's something that usually gets dealt with, or always gets dealt with.
What about the part about stopping people from wandering onto my property?
We can share a site plan with you. If you look at that site plan, there's so much tree bufferage, you got creeks, there's so much.
People can go through trees.
They don't tend to. I mean, I can't say what people.
That can also be hiding spots for people.
Well, our folks pass those criminal background checks. We don't, if you've got a criminal background, you're not coming to our community. So.
They bring people with them that aren't on the lease that you haven't background checked. I mean, you know how it works.
I know how it works. I'm just talking from experience. And when you have those people who don't have criminal backgrounds, probably don't associate that much with people with criminal backgrounds. So, I mean, look, anything's possible. I'm just going off what, past experience shows.
Thank you.
Sir.
Can you be more specific about the buffer zone?
Sure can.
trees or wood?
Trees.
Are they gonna grow in the winter?
Absolutely. I mean, what I can do is, how about this? How about we get a copy of our site plan for you?
That's fine. Also, love to see the engineering on the traffic study.
We're gonna have to get, I need to get your information because you're gonna be one of the folks that we need to sit down and run through that traffic study with. If I can get your information after this,
You can.
we'll get you information on the traffic study. We'll get you a copy of that site plan too. Yeah.
Is this plat of land all the way from 2A over to Cora Inn, or how big is this plat of land?
It's about 17 and a half acres, give or take.
So is it more towards the 2A side, or?
It's mostly, it doesn't, the only right of way it really touches is Happy Valley.
So is it in the center of that?
So if you're looking at a map,
Not those two houses.
Yeah, okay, not those.
Not those two houses.
if you're looking at a map, it's directly across from the high school, and the high school almost hits the middle of it. Let me get some water real quick.
This is more of a statement than a question, so you're off the hook on that one. But I want to make some,
Let's stick to questions, please. Just leave statements to better forum for that. Let's stick to questions.
can I explain to him why people are asking the questions that they're asking? Is that relevant?
I was just asking a question. Just give him a chance to answer.
I will explain to you afterwards why people are asking you the questions they are.
Sure.
Because our county government isn't giving us the answers.
All I say is all I can say is, I think, we're here to answer questions, and if you,
So wasn't a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
someone else,
Who's this?
who's this?
Do you mind?
Oh, you, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I can use
Oh,
this, don't worry about it.
No, okay.
So your property management group exists to make a profit?
Sure.
Yeah. So your property values go up year over year, right?
Tend to.
Typically. So
I mean,
in 15 years.
everyone's different.
In 15 years, when you're out of your commitments, it might behoove you to sell. Perhaps.
Possibly.
Possibly. Kind of regarding what my neighbor was saying about online comments, and it's an online comment. Who knows who's saying it, whether it's right. Just wanted to kind of give you a chance to respond, because this is what people are reading, and it's not fair if you can't.
Sure.
You said we're familiar with it. This tenant says, Gateway, the soon-to-be former owners, this is at your Jasmine Trails and Gulf Shores.
Yeah.
That's one of your properties.
Okay, yeah, Jasmine.
Most of us aren't privy to what he stated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, yeah, but whatever,
Am I mumbling? Sorry.
You want this?
Is this one not working?
Oh, as long as,
Sorry. So this is just an online review from a tenant at Jasmine Trails, one of Gateway's properties. The soon-to-be former owners do not care to assist or respond to you. They will never work with you in a crisis, and they will evict you over an unproven allegation. So just to give an idea of what people might be seeing online.
will you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. Gateway, the owners, the soon-to-be former owners, do not care to assist you or respond to you. They will never work with you in a crisis. They will evict you over an unproven allegation of prohibited conduct without hesitation.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe this is under a different manager or something, but that's an allegation against your company. I thought you might want to respond.
Sure.
The reviews for Jasmine Trails.
Our company manages almost 15,000 apartment units. That means we're making, hundreds of thousands of decisions and taking that many actions a day. I mean, if you follow our whole company around, and there's a lot of people working very hard, helping people work through their, they're living right there with our residents, and so, they'll make mistakes. I mean, I'll make mistakes standing up here tonight. I'll make mistakes standing up here tonight. So that may be a mistake. That may be a mistake that someone on our staff may have made. It's online, so we all know how much of a grain of salt you got to take with a review online, and there may be another review or more reviews out there. But overall, reputation, like I said, we feel like it speaks for itself. We think it speaks for itself because half of the units we manage are for other companies, and they wouldn't ask us to manage for them if we didn't have a good track record. And the only other thing I'd say is the nature of that person's, review. We haven't been able to really respond to it. We don't know any context, so I don't want to give it too much weight without being able to do that. But it may have been a resident that didn't like our standards, and we're like I said, we're pretty proud of our standards. So that's about all I can say.
Josh said that he would stick around for individual questions, but I think we're getting into the 7 o'clock hour here and we've about exhausted a lot of the common questions that people have. So I think this might be a good time for us to just conclude the meeting for everybody, and those of you that want to stick around and ask Josh some more questions or talk amongst yourselves about anything, we can do that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask the commissioner a question?
Can I say one?
Sure, as long as it pertains to this project.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's based on the project.
Sir, I'm going to ask one, just if you'll give me one moment. Again, I just want to emphasize, and then I'll turn it over to Shannon. I want to emphasize, we understand this is a community y'all live in, and we appreciate that, and we don't take that light, and appreciate y'all being here. I hope y'all felt like you could get an open forum, ask the questions you wanted to ask, and like Matt said, we're here to answer any more, but we're proud of what we're offering. We're proud of our track record, and we're very excited about the opportunity to be here in Walker County. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner, again, Thursday night, planning commission is gonna meet, is that right?
Yes, to my knowledge, this is on the agenda of the planning commission for the zoning.
Okay, how would you expect the planning commission to react, knowing that they only did a survey for the traffic in the area that they're building and didn't take into account the other two? Wouldn't it be almost impossible for the commission to approve it and send it to you with a stamp on it? Because they have to turn it down.
Well, the planning commission's been involved in those other projects as well, so they are aware of those projects. So they will have to, I would think, take that into account.
Have they
as
approved
their-
anything yet?
Pardon?
Has the planning commission approved anything on this yet?
No, that would be coming up this Thursday here at this facility.
Do you expect them to approve it?
That's completely independent of the planning commission. That's why they're in place to make an independent evaluation.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate y'all being here.